You're ready to go.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. It is now 7 p.m. We're located at Red Oak Municipal Center, 200 Lakeview, Red Oak, Texas. I'm Darius Parks, I'm the vice chair, and we do have a quorum. We have Mr. Willie Franklin, Mr. Scott Lindsay. I want to welcome him. He's one of the new members here. She's an alternate, and welcome her also. City staff, we have Ben and Brian here present also. Looking at the list here for its call to order, the notices have been legally posted for the Open Meetings Act. And one of the items here, we're going to have to vote for a new chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission and any related change in positions, including vice chair or secretary. So commissioners, need some input from you all to discuss this. Who do we have? Is Leroy?
I think Willie's talking, but it's on.
Willie,
you're on mute.
I think he's still on mute.
Willie, you're on mute still, I think. We can't hear you. Looks like you're talking. Is the volume on here?
I think he's trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Leroy? I didn't see Leroy on the screen.
Let's see.
I can't.
I do not see Leroy yet. He did say he might be a little late.
Okay, Leroy and Lance.
And Lance won't be me.
Okay.
If you're late, you end up getting elected. Is that not correct?
Hey,
We
Mr.
run
Scott,
the
that sounds good to me, right?
It's the way we used to do it on the council. You didn't show up, you got the job. I'm a big proponent of everybody moving up.
Yeah, I can see that. I think Willie was trying to say something, but I don't know. Can Kim vote, right? She can. Yes, Kim, since she's
Yeah,
on.
Kim's here.
Okay.
Willie, I think you can text on here. If it's something you think you can text, as it were.
Or you can call in.
Yeah.
I think there's a call number if you want to try to call in and then still just be able to use your screen to look at.
Yeah. Willie says he's not showing as muted on his end. Willie, were you able to verify your audio before you logged in? You were?
Does it
Tech
have anything to do
support.
with your earphones? He didn't have the earphones in when he first came in. Mine do that, so I don't know if that does or not.
Pretty good.
County 30. Okay.
Really, but you need a calendar.
Yeah, well, let him log out and then log back in and see if that fixes it.
Right. Leroy's other name is Darren.
Yeah.
Well, while we're working on the technical issue, I think it's still safe for me to just mention a few changes that staff will request for tonight to the order of the agenda. When we get to that point that you can change it. One issue is so basically just the consent agenda, because we've got the preliminary plat for the apartments that comes later. It's probably just cleaner if we can just save the consent agenda for the last item of the evening and just move it to the last item. So that way.
So B is gonna be last.
The consent agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we could just move that to the end. And then also for, let's see, make sure I say the right.
Anyone hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, we got you with it.
Okay.
Well, I'll just real quickly say, so then for, item F, the, event center KC 21001, I've got a issue with the address. It should have been 196 North Highway 35, and I have it as 508. So we cannot, after talking to the city attorney, we should not vote on this item tonight, but we can still have a dialogue with the applicant, which I think is still a good idea, because the past week, we've still been making some changes, so it might be good just to take this as an opportunity, have a dialogue, say whatever may need to be said. I mean, maybe it's just a matter of getting details down.
Okay.
And then apologize to Mr. Brewer, but we'll have to bring it back next month for an actual vote. So this means for item F, we could have a dialogue, but let's not open the public hearing
Okay.
for that item. So it'd just be more of like, kind of like a work session discussion type deal. So no action can take place. Shouldn't be trying to make any final decisions per se, but I can still present to you what's going on. Y'all can ask questions and give some advice of what you want to see or not.
Okay.
But we're not gonna, we're not gonna take action or take a vote.
Okay.
So, apologize, Willie, I was cutting into your time there, you finally got in.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me now. Hopefully we got it squared away. Good.
Okay. Yeah, we on the, number 2, we actually, I'm just gonna repeat what I said earlier. Vote for a new chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission and any related change in positions, including vice chair or secretary. So, appears if one position moves, the other 2 will move also. So, as commissioners, y'all have any thoughts on this? Or any volunteers?
This is Willie. First, congrats. Scott, welcome. I guess I should say welcome back. Kim, congratulations. I think no one would be a better chair than you, Mr. Vice Chair.
I like that
I
idea.
agree with that. I agree with that, Willie, thank you. And who was that, Mr. Scott?
Yes, sir. I love that idea.
I will accept that.
Yeah, I mean, if someone wants to make a motion.
I think, you need to make a motion to nominate, Derek as the chair, and then take an official vote on it, and then, or unless somebody else wants to nominate somebody else, but
Well, someone can make a motion
Yeah.
and they can take a vote, and the vote goes however it goes.
right.
And can I have a motion for, the chair position for the Planning and Zoning Board, please?
I move to nominate Derek Park as chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. I guess Derek Parks, which is me.
Did you vote for yourself?
Would be the chair. All right, so since we voted for the chair, since I'm now the chair, now we voted for the vice chair.
Right.
Any thoughts on vice chair, commissioners? Any volunteers for the vice chair?
God, are you ready to jump back in like you never left?
Hey, I was thinking that Mr. Class, you'd probably like to move right on up there.
That makes sense.
Oh,
That
okay.
makes sense.
Oh, Leroy? Okay. Yeah, that,
I got you.
oh, I
There
heard,
he is.
I heard Leroy's
Yeah,
voice. I
Leroy's
didn't
with
see
us.
him. Oh, he is, oh, okay.
I don't know if he accepted that or not.
He's
I
doing
got you
poker
back,
face.
Derek.
Okay. All right, commissioners, can we have a motion for the vice chair?
A motion to nominate Mr. Leroy Kleiss as vice chairman.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we have Leroy Kleiss as the vice chair.
Now we need a secretary.
Hey, Mr.
Now,
Franklin.
we need to-
We're just moving on up there, right, guys?
Since
Right,
I pointed all the fingers, I guess it's my turn.
All right, can I have a motion for secretary, please?
Move we have Mr. Willie Franklin as secretary.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We have Willie Franklin as the new secretary. Okay, we're gonna move on down the road. We go to the consent agenda. Items listed below are considered to be routine by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Well, we're gonna move that one to the end, consent agenda.
Yeah, B.
Yeah.
What about A?
Well, yeah, the whole consent agenda, yeah.
Oh, you wanna move it last?
Yeah, both items A and B, just move the whole consent agenda to the end of the meeting.
Okay. All right, we're gonna make a correction. Consent agenda will be heard at the end of the meeting. So we're going to new business?
Yes.
All right, okay, staff, we're going to new business, and letter C is a staff update. The topic is a comprehensive plan update and a new Parks and Trails master plan.
Yeah. So we have a little bit more to report this time. We've had our first steering committee meeting, which is made up of sort of a core group with the P&Z chair, the president of the IDC, the EDC, and the Parks Board. That's kind of our core. Then we have some additional members from the community to represent the civic interest, business interest, and such. So we have about a 12, 13 member steering committee for the comprehensive and parks plan update. We will have a stakeholder meeting, hopefully either the end of this month or in early March. The stakeholder group will basically be members from P&Z, City Council, the EDC, the IDC, and the Parks Board. And that gives you obviously a certain amount of breadth, and plus that's about 40 some odd people or so that's a pretty big group to work with. Some things that I'd like to share with you from the steering committee feedback that staff thought was interesting is, and we talked to the consultants also afterwards, kind of what did they pick up on, and there were several themes we identified. And so one of them is an idea of destination. Again, now this is in the context of land use and park planning. We didn't get into a lot of detail in that first meeting is what does destination oriented mean, or creating destinations exactly mean, because it could mean different things to different people. But that at least as an early theme, destination, placemaking. Placemaking being kind of related, the idea of some place you want to go, whether it's to go shop, or maybe it's a neighborhood you live in, that place feels like a place, it feels like home, it feels like community. Again, these can mean different things to different people, but just that general concept. Another idea that came up with was experiences that, that the city looked to try to create that idea of creating experiences. If you followed any of the news in retail and the disruption and transformation that has occurred in retailing the past 10 years, that is a big theme. As the past 5 years, many businesses have moved towards trying to create their retail into some kind of experience that's either more interactive or has some kind of value add proposition to it. It's not just a issue of go get stuff. You know, there's supposed to be some kind of experience with it as a way of trying to compete against the online retailers. I don't know if that's what they meant by create experiences. That's just one kind, and if you're in planning or economic development, that's what you assume they may be meaning. But this is what the role for the consultant will be, is to dig into some of these broad themes. The last one that came up was this idea of innovation or being innovative. Again, we didn't have specific discussion of what that meant. But, you know, from a staff perspective, when we hear terms like that, then it sounds like maybe doing what everyone else is doing isn't innovative. So, you know, if we are looking at doing policies or plans or whatever of stuff that everyone else did, hard to see how that's innovative, at least from a staff perspective. But again, these things are subjective. They mean different things to different people. So our consultants will need to dig into those 4 themes. So the steering committee and the stakeholders will have a chance to talk and dig in, and let's uncover what do these themes mean, and what do they mean to the people of Red Oak. The last thing I'll leave you with is just an idea of, you know, someone who's done a number of comp plans on the consulting side. I would say I would just want to really encourage y'all to think, since everyone on P&Z will be a stakeholder, is really think about the future. Because that long-range plan, that comprehensive land use plan, that is your vision document. That is your guide to formulating policy. It is not the policy itself. You know, your zoning codes, your building codes, your fire codes, your subdivision codes, your plating codes, those are your laws of the land, as it were. Your comprehensive land use plan is your vision document. What do you aspire to be in the future? So you really want to think ahead like 20 years or more out. Now, you may do a comp plan every 5 years. For some of you maybe who do some of your own planning for your retirement, or you maybe work in corporate strategy or something, you'll have like that long-range plan that shoots out however far. Maybe it only shoots out 10 years, but every year you update your plan, right? You don't just stick to the same plan for 10 years. You know, you'll see what's working, what's not working. Have things changed? Should we change what? And so with the comp plan, you really want to think 20 years or more out, with the idea that every 5 years minimum, you're going to revisit it and see how are we trending. And that's kind of what y'all are doing now. I mean, it's been 10 years, but it was also your first comp plan, and you've had great growth in these 10 years. So it's not a criticism, to be clear. It's just that, you know, now is a great time at that 10-year mark to be checking again. It's a comp plan, parks plan update. Do we still believe in this vision? Do we still believe in these goals? Do we believe, if we do we believe these objectives get us there? And again, I'd encourage you to think far in the future. And the one, I guess, idea I'll leave you with is just a hypothetical example. It's something that's come up even in recent years when I was doing some consulting still, is, you know, you think about these cars that can drive autonomously, and they have these ratings, L1 through L5. L1, if you have a car made in the past 5 years, you probably have some L1 capabilities. It's basically just like collision avoidance. L5 means the car is completely autonomous, has no steering wheel, no brake, right? It just drives itself. That's L5. L4 has the steering wheel and the brake and everything, but if you want to turn it over to the car, it will drive. Honda, which is a very conservative automaker, has already said that they are comfortable with their L3 performance. So you can think of that as semi-autopilot. My point is, we're getting really close, really fast to having vehicles that are going to have a lot of ability to drive themselves. Not next year. But again, if we're thinking 20 years out, I think it's very plausible that in 20 years, a good number of people will have L4, L5 vehicles that could, for example, you say, hey, Alexa, go get my groceries. and your car leaves your garage, goes to the queue at the Walmart, and they put your groceries in the trunk and it comes back to you. This isn't just my idea. This is like a 5-year-old idea already that I've read about, of what the future will bring. If that does happen, say in 20 years, or possibly sooner, what does that mean for a parking lot? So if today we pass policies saying let's, have lots and lots of parking, but in 10 to 20 years, maybe we need less, then what is our plan for redeveloping the parking lot? So it can now become productive, tax-generating space, rather than just dead space of concrete. So those are things I would encourage y'all to think about, read some articles, maybe science fiction, whatever. Try to think 20 years ahead, what may be different, and what will that future look like, and how do you get from here to there? And if you don't like that future, then what will you do about it? How will you manage it? I mean, you can't stop it, you can try to manage it. What will you do? So that's just something I want y'all to think about, is what do you want for your future? Really think far ahead. Think of scenarios. Think of how you might adapt or adjust to these changes. So with that, I will quit talking about the comp plan.
Thank you, Brian. We
Okay.
appreciate that update. We're going to move on to agenda item D, conduct a public hearing and consider approving a residential replat of Lot 3, Block 1 in Green Valley Acres to create 2 new lots, where each lot is approximately 1 acre at 314 Crestview, City of Red Oak, Texas. Case number P as in Paul 21002, requested by Saul Lawyer. Staff.
Yeah, and you can see this, right? I'm sharing this correctly. So this is a very straightforward case. It's a residential replat. We've talked about residential replats before. They're a ministerial act. There are no variances or anything of that nature affiliated with this residential replat. And he's basically just dividing it into 2 lots, approximately 1 acre each. The zoning district is R3. And let me get you an image here. So again, this is off Crestview, but as you can see, like to the left, there's already 2 similarly sized lots. So this was an area that had kind of the 2 acre lot or 2+ acre lot, and a lot of people have been subdividing them into about 1 acre lots, because also with the need for septic, I don't believe there's sewer over there right now. Okay. Yeah, so that's just kind of the nature of how this is going. It's consistent with the zoning. There's really nothing unusual about it. So on the public notice side, I will be sending out a note. Staff is going to recommend to approve this because it's a ministerial act. And so assuming you do in fact approve it, after council, then staff will, because it'll require a council hearing because it's a residential replat. And after that, I'll send out the property owner notice to those within 200 feet that this subdivision did take place as required by state law. So with that, staff has no more to say about it.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. And this is a public hearing, and since we have a public hearing, the ones in favor, please go first, and please state your name and your address so we can have it for our records. And if anybody's online, if you're for this item, you can go ahead and speak, please.
I'm sorry, did you officially open the public meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you're for this item, anyone, you can go ahead and speak, please. See on the screen?
He's in the call. He's muted and got video off right now.
I believe Saul he logged in online, but I believe he's muted.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Salt. Give us your name and your address, and since we have the public hearing open, if you're for this item, you can go ahead and speak on this item, please.
Yes, my name is Saul Loya, and I'm just requesting this replat for these two lots that I'm seeing. Like the neighbor next door did the same thing, and I see that if you go down the street, there's another lots that are the same, and I'm just building two houses in there, one for me and one going to be for my brother. And I guess not, there is sewer on that street and water, and the sewer line is actually on the where the lots are, and the water line runs across the street. And I believe that's all. It requires all the measurements that you guys have for the lots on R3.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Salt. Is anyone else want to speak for this item? Anyone against this item we're speaking with? And can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
A motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have one motion to close. Staff, any questions on this? Any concerns?
Mr. Chairman, Willie Franklin, I do have a quick question about the 25-foot build line. So, Brian, if you could answer, please, that 25-foot build line, is that the same continuity of the block face, or is it just only for lots 3A and 3B?
Well, I guess I don't know what the other build lines as noted on the neighboring plat is. I can see, I don't recall the zoning district front yard.
The 25-foot build line is set by the current zoning, and so even if, so the build lines are always set by the zoning, not necessarily the plat. So even if it said on a plat that the front build line was 10 feet, but the zoning requires 25 feet, we would go, like if they had submitted a permit, we would go with the zoning regulated building line versus what it says on the plat.
Okay.
That makes,
Okay, so it's not more restrictive, it's the zoning overrules the platted build line, correct?
yes, yeah, really the build lines on a plat are informational. So we just have them show them on the plat for information purposes, but they comply with the zoning when the zoning is done. So, but you can change the zoning without replatting if you wanted to. But it's always gonna follow the zoning first and then the plat second.
Okay, but in this case, it's 25 foot for the zoning and the platted build line is 25 foot, so I guess it wouldn't matter either way.
Right, yeah, so again, we have them show it on the plats for informational purposes. And in this case, we have to show the 25-foot build line because that's what the zoning requires as a minimum.
Oh, okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Willie. Any other questions from the commissioners? And if not, can I have a motion, please?
I'm sorry, which item was this? D?
Item D as a dog, yes.
I move to approve item D as is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I have none. So agenda item D has been approved. We're going to move along to agenda item E, and conduct a public hearing and consider amending Plan Development 101, reducing the front yard setback from 30 feet to 20 feet. Property is located at 1008 East Ovilla Road, City of Red Oak, Texas. Case Z as in zebra 21002, requested by the city staff.
So, as y'all may be aware, TxDOT is widening Ovilla, also known as FN 664, and so in the process, they're having to do some takings up and down the road. And so one issue that has come up is, in this case, let me zoom in so you can see a little better. So at 1008 Ovilla, and we need more. This house was built a couple of years ago. It was zoned PD 101, so it's a custom zoning district, kind of like a site plan district. It uses residential estate as the basis for the zoning, generally speaking, but they did put in specific building plans for it. One thing though is the house, with where they did end up siting it, which was fine, but when TxDOT comes in and does their takings, then they'll have a legal non-conforming site. So by changing the zoning and having it all conforming, then you have a legal conforming zoning district. That is better than having non-conforming zoning district. The other thing that I guess I could point out is, the house to the next, like 2 doors down, that house isn't very old. It's pretty nice as well, but as you can tell, it's set back much further, so there was no need to initiate a zoning amendment for him because he still clears his setback requirements. That since PD 101 and 1008 Ovilla, we're trying to help him out. I did talk to the owner, Mr. Rockwell, and he's supportive, and I'm not sure there's anything else much to say about it.
No, and just, Commission, we may be seeing a lot of these, in the next few months as TxDOT finalizes all their right-of-way takings up and down Ovilla, because it's certainly not the city's goal to, have TxDOT take land away from an owner and then create a non-conforming issue on their property, like especially as we kind of get closer to 35, there's going to be some parking issues where people will be quote-unquote non-conforming because they don't have enough parking. So we might be doing a lot of these small change, staff-initiated zoning cases just to make sure that people aren't left with land that doesn't comply with their zoning. And the reason we want to do that is because when, especially like a business goes to sell their land, some of the underwriting requirements is they'll look at the parking or they'll look at the original zoning that was done and say, well, hey, we can't close on this property because it doesn't match the zoning. And so we don't want to create situations like that for people up and down Ovilla Road. So we're trying to work with them, make interpretations where we can, and document them, as well as, in this case, we were happy to actually just go ahead and change the build line, which doesn't affect the property. It just changes an imaginary line on a piece of paper.
Okay. And like you said, I guess all the parcels, they're going to be done at different times, like you said.
Yeah, we're kind of waiting to hear from TxDOT on which ones they're saying, well, hey, this guy, is completely out of his zoning district now, or they give us like site plans where they're showing like either how much parking they're taking or if they're taking away a sign or something like that we would have to specifically adjust the zoning to make it work for them and so that they can have what they did have, or at least make them conforming with their zoning. Because again, we don't want people getting hamstrung and not being able to sell their property when they do want to sell it just because it's out of compliance.
Okay. Thank you. Since this is a public hearing, I would like to open up the public hearing. And all those in favor of this item, please state your name and your address. If we have anyone that want to speak for this item, Agenda E. Do we have anybody against Agenda Item E? Please state your name and your address. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I think I heard someone saying something, unless,
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes. Can you state your name and your address, please?
I just want to announce my presence here. I'm an attorney. My name is Lynn Dye from Padron Law Firm. We represent Mr. Rockwell in a related matter, but not necessarily to this zoning matter. I'm not aware my clients object to this zoning change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, that's online. And can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions or concerns after reading agenda item E?
No, I mean, I think it's a good idea, I think, to tackle it now, and that way we have something already kind of set in stone as far as a way to move forward. So I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you, Will. I agree with that. Anyone else? And if not, can I have a motion, please, for agenda item E?
Go ahead, Mr. Vice.
I motion we approve agenda item E.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Agenda item E is approved as written. Moving along, we're going to agenda item F. There's going to be some changes on F where, as a commissioners, we're not going to have a vote. I don't know if Mr. Brewers is online. We're going to have a dialogue with the applicant, and we're going to move this to next planning and zoning meeting. We have to make a correction for agenda item F. So, staff.
Yeah, so my understanding is, so we can't take action and vote, but we can have a discussion. We've still been kind of actually working with the applicant on a few changes anyway, so it may be for the best in the long run. So this is the Hamptons Event Center at 196 Interstate IH-35 on the east side of the highway near Buckskin Road. Y'all may have noticed it. Kind of a two-tone building. It's about 10,000 square feet that exists there now. And so basically Mr. Brewer is interested in here to the south. Let me zoom in for you a little bit more. To the south here, having what we're calling an accessory building of around 1,200 square feet to function kind of like the chapel service. He does mostly weddings, those kinds of special events, generally speaking. And so he's found a need to try to better facilitate his events, to have a separate chapel. Some of his guests, they may want to do a wedding service with their church, but not everyone does or can get that time slot that they're looking for. So he's providing this as part of his business plan. The other thing is to put the building here means relocating a dumpster. So the dumpster ends up over here in the bottom right-hand corner. No issue with that, really. You do lose, I believe, one space in the end by doing this, but he still has 153 spaces and 150 were required in his PD. Then also up front, north of the main building, he's got a fountain feature that he calls it. It also kind of looks a little bit like a monument sign. So, anyways, just understand that it's there now. I think Mr. Burr didn't fully understand the nature of his PD. Like some people, they think they've basically got a commercial district. I mean, they do to some degree, but he has specific development plans that were submitted. So when he does stuff, a lot of stuff he actually really needs to come in and amend or revise that PD kind of every time. So that's kind of just the downside with the planned development zoning district, is unless you worked it in to have those kinds of freedoms, you're kind of, you got to come back to the zoning commission and council. So since he had already built this fountain, we asked him to put it on the development plan, just try to align, what he's already done.
Right.
So just so you know, this is there. I mean, he technically shouldn't have done it, but I mean, it's basically a fountain that's a big square cube in the middle with an H on the front.
Right.
So it's not like a sign that reads text. It does have a letter. As a planner, I'd call it a sign, but it is also a water feature.
Right.
So I mean, it's both. It's a water monument sign. But not a real issue with it though. He's also got an understandable concern about the noise generated from the highway. And so part of my understanding is part of the reason for having the separate chapel here is to try to help manage some of the noise as you have your events. He's thinking it might be a little easier to keep it quieter in this location. It's that much further away. He's also interested in doing some landscaping, which we can follow the landscaping ordinance for him to do additional landscaping, so that's not really an issue. We've been kind of going back and forth though on perimeter fencing. Here, I'll show you one thing that he proposed that staff isn't going to support, but again, it's y'all's call. But I would say this is going to be a no. This is basically a standing seam metal fence. The other thing is, it was interesting when Mr. Burr sent this to me because, like, I think I saw this the morning after I was up till 3 in the morning Googling soundproofing windows and walls and fencing materials because of my neighbors.
Right.
So I just happened to be looking into some of this. And so when he sent me this fence, it was interesting because from what I read, a metal fence is the least effective means of sound deadening. The best is a laid mason brick stone type of wall. Of course, you're still going to have the issue of noise coming over the top, right?
Right.
But this was like, we don't allow this anywhere. I don't know why we would start allowing this. So, I mean, from a staff perspective, this type of fence, well, it looks reasonably well done and may work in certain places. This doesn't seem like that's anything we've seen y'all interested in on I-35. Let me jump back to the plan here. So, I mean, he could do a masonry type wall. He could do, I mean, if you're following the code, again, he has to actually get permission from y'all because the fencing screening requirement isn't connected. So he really does need to ask y'all, where can I put this and what can it be? So, but your standard fencing screening would say, like, you could do the masonry kind of wall that's laid mason, brick, and stone.
Right.
You could do a concrete panel, which I don't think would really look good on I-35. You could do a cedar lap fence, better than I think a concrete panel, but that also may not be as effective. I suggested to Mr. Burr that one thing was, rather than necessarily running the fence along the perimeter, is maybe put it closer to your building, like between the big detention pond and the building. I mean, again, I don't know what you call it, an acoustical engineer, Though, I think somewhat of the physics makes sense, that really it'd be better to put your 8-foot wall closer to your building than further away, especially given where all this traffic is traveling over. Plus, if you did, I think if he did some trees and shrubs between the pond and say then a solid fence, I would think that then the trees could help break up the noise pattern coming from the roads, plus trees aren't regulated by height, right? So he can have really tall trees.
Right.
And then have that solid fence, and then you may want to then landscape the inside, because the other thing I was reading at 3 in the morning was, sometimes landscaping and trees aren't effective at, like, measurably reducing the noise level. They change your mindset or perspective, so you feel like you hear less noise than you are when you're in the presence of a fair amount of landscaping. That's what I read. I mean, I can't prove it to you. That's just what I read at 3 in the morning.
That's interesting.
I was desperate. Let's see. And then a weird thing is in his PD that I've never seen before. I asked probably 3 or 4 of my planning friends who have more experience than me if they've ever seen it before, and none of them had, which is the occupancy rating was in the PD. And that was also news to Mr. Brewer, that he had a limit of 325 max occupancy in his PD. The building was rated and accepted by fire at 440. So from a zoning perspective, I mean, y'all have heard me say this, I think, several times now, building code and fire code is not zoning code. And a max occupancy, that's a fire building code issue, not a zoning issue.
Right.
Mr. Brewer is asked to remove the 325 restriction that's in the PD. So from my planning perspective, I would agree. That's not to say I don't care about safety, I just don't think that belongs here. Fire code and building code are already regulating the occupancy, and they should, but they should do it from their vantage point, as it were, on development, not in the zoning.
Not in the PD itself.
So the parking is based on the size of the building?
Well, that's been the other thing is for the parking, we don't really exactly have something that fits this cleanly as far as like a parking code classification for an event center. So one approach in zoning can be is you can start trying to slice and dice all the different uses and all the different places and calculating a complicated square footage. The thing is, just as with his max occupancy being at 440, that depends on what the event is. There are certain event patterns he does where he's limited to closer to the 300 mark, depending on if he's got a bunch of tables set up or not. So his capacity is going to fluctuate. I would think that a simple rule of thumb, when I was looking, what seemed to be was more of kind of like the idea of, if you kind of assume 3 people per car might come, you got 153 parking spaces, so you can support 459 people. So if you have a max occupancy of 440 and you can support 459 people by that number, then you have more than enough parking. I also talked to Chief Wolf, our police chief, and asked him to run, looking back 2 years for this area, has he had any complaints about parking? Like the idea of if Mr. Brewer had some big event, did you have any spillover? And Police Chief Wolf confirmed that they've had no issues. The other thing, in talking to Mr. Brewer, he's telling me that so far, like kind of his best night ever so far has been still under 300 total people. And I believe he said it was specifically around 280, he was estimating. And he felt like he probably was only using 40% of his parking. So at least with the events he's running so far, let's say he's not using half the parking with the events he runs so far. And even at that kind of ratio, then he still wouldn't use 100% of the parking, right? So it doesn't seem like there's a need to ask for any more parking, especially since he really has no place to give it from, unless you want to start taking up landscaping. So it seems like he's got enough parking. Plus, from a planning perspective, for a special event, if this becomes like, the best ever event center, and he somehow with this little additional 1,200 square feet is able to eke out a little more occupancy for the site, it seems like he still has room for parking. And even if he didn't, other places I've seen that do events, they do valet service. You go and talk to the people across the street of Buckskin that have the retail center. You say like, well, all your stuff's closed on weekends and evenings. Let me park, 50 cars over in your parking lot using a valet service. You do stuff like that, or you get a shuttle bus. So there are plenty of solutions should there ever be a parking issue at this event center, but we have no evidence that we've had anything close to an issue yet. The other thing, just so you know, is like I was saying, these PDs are real restrictive, so his one use is doing this event center.
Right.
So if he has this great business and he sells and someone buys it and doesn't call me first asking what can I do and wants to do anything other than an event center, they're going to have to ask y'all to change that zoning. So if someone decided, like if Mr. Burr sells 10 years from now, someone buys it and says, I want to do a concert hall or something out of it, right?
Right.
Okay, great. Got to ask the city if you can do that. And then we can look at the parking then, if that still works or not. But this is, just for this one use, pretty much tailored to his needs. Anyway,
What about
all the major points?
Yeah,
I haven't talked
I think-
about the elevations yet.
Yeah,
But as far as site,
Let's talk about some of the ones we compared it to and why we came to the conclusion that 150, other than, so we kind of looked at two different things. We looked at what are people actually doing when they go to these things, right? So and we kind of came up with an average of 3 people per car to be on the conservative side, but we also kind of looked at some of our other codes, like I think restaurant was one of them.
it's 75. Yeah, our most restricted is 75 square feet.
Yeah, one space per 75 square feet, which was, I don't remember the exact number, but it came out to be adequate. So using that most restrictive parking, he still had enough within that limit.
Yeah, so basically 153. So,
Yeah.
he was, and I think probably Ben and I both made comments, at least since I've been here for 18 months, about how much parking we're already requiring. So I find Mr. Burr's claims of having too much parking even to not be an exaggeration. So I'm pretty confident that he's got sufficient parking for what he's doing, even with adding this 1,200 square foot accessory use for something that's really meant to be supplemental to the already existing event that evening. So it's, it's got 2 bathrooms and basically a big open floor plan. So it's really just meant for providing the chapel service.
Yeah, I think the way he described it to us, it wouldn't be like, you got 2 events going on, one at the big center and one at the small one. He is claiming that his use would be more as, like Brian says, an accessory to the main use at the building. So you do something over in the small building, but then everybody or a certain amount of the party would then move over to the bigger building.
Okay.
That's not to say, we're not going to sit out there and try to police that, but that's what the applicant has said his intent is.
And so here's just the floor plan of the proposed building, ceremony hall is what he's calling it. So like I said, there's two bathrooms and just a big open floor plan. So it's pretty simple. And then the elevations, we just got Dave, been working on them. He had a good idea, so he needed to work on them over the weekend. it's a little hard to see. If I go back to the floor plan real quick, it may make more sense. You see how there's kind of these bump outs on the corners
Right.
there? So before he had more of a box shape, and it looks boxy here, but if you kind of imagine those punch outs, the intent here is to mirror more of the main building, which y'all have seen it on I-35.
Right.
It's kind of got that horizontal articulation or variation where the kind of wall goes in and out. So he's just trying to mirror that. And he says he'll paint to match the colors, and then this top cap's going to be stucco. And this is a fairly high parapet wall. The idea is you would not see the HVAC or mechanical equipment, from the road, for sure. It's the south elevation down here. This is the one that, again, faces south, the least visible. So the service panel will be run underground and connect to the back of the building, trying to make it the least visible. But it's got lots of windows, and where there's not windows, he's got kind of the faux windows with the brick pattern, using similar elements of the wall sconces and the overhang as the main building. So that's the intent, is to just kind of do like a mini version, as it were, of the main building. And like I said, I think where's my site plan here? So the fencing screening issue, again, there's a big detention pond here, and then behind the main building, there's, I believe it's a CMU wall that's painted to match, and so he's kind of got a somewhat of an acoustic barrier to that area, but he's wanting to connect to the building down here. So again, I'm not an engineer or understand acoustics that well, but I would say, depending on where he wants to put the fence, he's showing it on the perimeter. That would be a reasonable place to put it, technically. That would be consistent with their codes to put it on the perimeter. But that metal panel fencing thing we've never approved that before that I'm aware of.
Right.
And so it just also, if your point is acoustics, from what I read, it doesn't help.
Okay.
So I don't see any reason to make an exception, like why this is a unique situation to consider that.
Right.
And the cost is an issue. Like I say, I would think you could just move it closer to the building. The other thing is there's sound deadening windows and inserts and sheetrock and all this stuff that one can do. So if the issue is being inside the building,
right,
there sounds like there are other options, and he ought to explore them. But one thing I guess might help is if P&Z has, a feeling about, if you agree with staff that that metal panel fencing screening is not something you're interested in, and he ought to stick to something just, more consistent with what the city has normally approved, because that's kind of staff's direction, is to stick with something within the bounds of what we normally approve.
Okay.
But if y'all see something different, speak up, let us know. We're always willing to embrace change.
Okay. So I guess, Mr. Brewer, does he know about the fence, and did he just send you there and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this?
We've talked.
We've
talked. I think he might prefer to hear it from you if it's something y'all are not interested in, than relying solely on staff having a feeling that y'all might not be interested in.
Right.
But he's been flexible. He's just trying to do a good business and just needs some. I think it'll help if y'all can give him a little direction. If there's anything here that y'all see as maybe a bit of a red flag, that y'all can point that out to him so he can work with staff to bring y'all back something next month with the correct address. Again, sorry, Mr. Brewer, but bring something back next month, that hopefully will have addressed everything. You're not guaranteeing you're going to approve it. You're just giving some feedback, for things you may or may not support based on what we're telling you.
Okay.
So again, you're not voting, you're not making a decision, but you can give some feedback.
Is Mr. Brewer on?
I hope so.
Yes, I'm on.
Okay. I'm glad you know, Mr. Brewer, I was just making sure you was here, just kind of listening
Yes,
to the
sir.
conversation.
Ben, is there anything else you want to add at this point, or?
No,
Okay,
no,
so,
no.
staff rest, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brewer,
Yes, can I address?
yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Brewer.
So I guess to start off, thanks again for allowing me to be present today. To start off with the fountain, I did approach the city for approval before we did build the fountain. So we did go through the city officials first, and Ben did get back with me with the email saying it was okay to build a fountain. So I just wanted to correct that. We did get permission to do so. Now, as regards to the fence, I'm open. I came up with a simple, clean design that would look, I thought would look exceptional from the freeway. I don't have a problem doing a masonry fence. I thought it would look a little rough from the highway. But the whole vision is from the ceremony space with the large windows on that west side is to overlook the pond, to give that ceremony a beautiful view out the windows, overlooking the pond, the fountain, seeing all. So if you cut that off and just put a fence behind it, well, hey, that takes away from the beauty of that pond. Secondly, coming down the parking lot headed south, it's a trail that leads right to the gas station that's up the road there. So that would help cut some of that traffic as well. But the main thing is really trying to cut the vision and the sound from the highway. More than anything, initially I wanted the green space to be a space where we could hold outside ceremonies, but with the noise, and of course, it'd be hard to say I do with a big 18-wheeler going by every 2 seconds, remember, with the loud, grumbly noise. So we have a beautiful venue, and I'm telling you, people are talking about this place like no other. But things have changed, times have changed to where now you have to have a separate ceremony space. People are not doing what you call a flip, where they go in and try to do the ceremony and the reception at the same time. So by seeing this, we saw a great need to add this building. But with that being said, we wanted the vision, the view from that ceremony space to overlook the pond area. Now, not only with the new construction of the highway coming in, we want to definitely hide all that construction for the next year or so. We don't know how long. So if we did a fence that would still allow the trucks, the vision of the highway right there would just basically be a point to where it's useless. So we really, I'm open for any privacy fence that would help cut down the noise. And if you guys drove by there, we just overdid the landscaping. We put a series of shrubbery down that west line to just try and cut back. But when we do our tours with our clients, they kind of look out and say, the trucks, and they kind of just walk off. And what we're trying to do is save those clients and make sure this business survives. You know, with the client, the current climate in which we're in with COVID and whatnot, we lost a lot of our business when we was assuming that we would get some of the corporate events and whatnot. And because of COVID, that really pushed that aside. Now, just keep in mind, we do employ all the Red Oak police officers. They work every event. We can go outside the county. We can select other authorities, but we select to use the ones here at Red Oak, no doubt. So we appreciate bringing the jobs to the city as well. But that's the biggest concern, just making that like a park-like area. And you guys all must have been married before. If you're not, haven't been, but you know what I'm saying when it comes to bringing a beauty to that little area there. And that's basically what we're trying to create there that he just highlighted. And we're not asking to put this privacy fence around the entire property, just somewhere around the southwest corner of the property to eliminate the sound, the noise, and the highway portion of it so we can create a nice space. Now, in most cases, the property that's south of me is zoned residential. So most of the times you would have a masonry wall there in regards to that. Another thing is a concern is just passerbys. Once they do the enlargement of the freeway, there would be a sidewalk. Not only we want the privacy fence for that reason, but we don't want just passerbys walking by jumping into this detention pond. So that's another area in which we have concerns about. So we definitely want to enclose that in just to keep the outside public from going swimming on a hot summer evening, but also bring the beauty to what we're trying to create here at the Hamptons at Red Oak.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Brewer. I believe that's all we have on our side. Unless Brian, you want to add something, or?
Yeah, well, I think it's, you know, it's one of the things that if you're wanting to kind of create sort of this, I'll call it like an oasis, as it were. I mean, we kind of need to, I think, maybe see a little more detail then, because, you know, we've got this detention pond area, but got the building here, but so is there going to be like a patio? Is there going to be a pergola? What's all this area around the building between then the detention pond and this building going to be? So we're going to need to see that too for the PD. We need to see some idea of what they do there.
That's all landscaping now. We're not changing anything up as far as landscaping. What we're trying to do is put a privacy fence around the southwest corner. We're not adding anything. We're not trying to add anything. We have a ton of landscaping. We have a pond that's a retention pond there. And basically, we're just trying to bring some privacy and protection to this portion of that pond area. And that's pretty much it. We're not adding any landscaping. We have a ton of landscaping. We don't need to add any landscape. We do not want a fence directly behind the building. That wouldn't be an appeal to my eye or any others who would perhaps consider having a wedding. So basically what we're asking for, and only what I'm asking for, is a fence around that back portion. Now, it should be in code that I have one around a detention pond anyway. That should be code. So we really shouldn't be talking about the fact that if there is a fence, it should be a fence. I guess the biggest issue is what type of fence will you guys allow me to have?
So Barry, so are you saying that this landscape plan accurately reflects what is there today?
Yes.
Okay, and you don't want to make any changes to this landscape plan?
No, that's correct. Now, of course, we do have more landscaping that may not be displaying on your actual screen there because we put more landscape. I didn't feel the need that we had to come in and actually notify you guys, you know, of additional plats and whatnot. But there's a lot more landscape, and I'm sure the staff have driven by and saw the landscaping.
Well, I guess where I'm going with it more is I guess what one might call, you know, if one thinks broadly of landscaping, you have softscaping and hardscaping. So soft is your trees and your shrubs and your turf. Hardscaping is like your patios and pergolas. So I'm just wanting to make sure you're saying this is it. Really, I'm thinking more about the hardscape. You know, because if you were wanting to have, you know, like a patio and a pergola or things that connect, now's the time to tell us. So when we bring this back next month, it reflects either what is on the ground or it reflects what you want to put on the ground later. So that's all I'm doing, is just trying to get clarification. Okay. Really more about the hardscape.
Now, we do have a set of stairs coming from the patio that kind of comes down to before where we have the proposed accessory building. It's a set of concrete stairs that comes down to that green space, which is already there. We do have that now. But as in regards to additional landscaping, we're, like I said, we're basically just trying to get a fence around the property as far as privacy.
Okay.
Well, okay, and so I guess what would, if you could, I mean, other than that metal fence, what is a fence you'd be interested
I would do any fence, whatever you said cedar, hey, I could do cedar. It could be made of needles. Brian, I would accept whatever you guys throw at me. I don't have a problem with it. I just want to take the vision of an 18-wheeler going down the street out the vision of those who are trying to have a beautiful evening, like you mentioned, oasis type of a wedding. So I'm open. Whatever you guys decide this evening, you guys say a masonry fence that pretty much mirror what I already have. Hey, I'll go with that, and we could just end it right there. I don't have a problem with that. I do a beautiful masonry fence to match what I already have around the east side of the property, and we're done.
Well, I guess if P&Z has any comments or recommendations they want to share, the thought I have is, I guess, depending on what the masonry fence is, if someone, and it would be expensive, and I'm not saying he should do this, I'm just saying, if you were to do a laid masonry brick stone wall on the perimeter, that would look nice, as it were, compared to, say, a CMU wall. But a CMU wall would look, I think, maybe not as nice. It would look more kind of heavy commercial. And if that was something he wanted to do, I think if a CMU wall, if it were me, I would rather than, if I'm driving down the road, I guess I'd rather see some trees and shrubs, in front of a CMU wall.
Well, I can't put any more. I can't put any trees. We have TxDOT coming in. There's no more trees. TxDOT already picked up 2 feet of my property, so there is no room for trees. That we can forget about the west side. That is not happening because they'll be, I believe, within the next 2 months working on that. Now, once they get started, now we have an open concept to construction. Now we have it open to the freeway as well. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Brian, the address was placed wrong. So, I mean, if the address was placed right, we could probably move forward. If you guys tell me what, type of fence is suitable for the Red Oak, I do it. I don't have a problem with it. I just want to move forward tonight because I had this on agenda for tonight to move forward. So if we can discuss it, get it finalized, I'm good, whatever fence you come up with.
Okay. So, Brian, what we need to just produce to Mr. Brewer some pictures of?
No, I mean, I guess there's an opportunity for y'all to have a chance to say any kind of advice you want to give, because so when we bring it back next month, hopefully it's a real quick hearing.
Right. Okay. And like I said, so like to me, his issue is just the fence part, right? Is it just a fence? He's open to put.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like I said,
we're asking for, so he's like he's not.
Yeah, it's just one of the things of staff shouldn't be in the position of necessarily trying to design anything for anybody. That's what the consultants are for. But we want to be mindful on y'all's behalf of what comes in front of you on the aesthetics. So if he's saying, he'll build whatever y'all may ask, and there's no room for any landscaping, and if he wants the highest performing sound deadening thing, it sounds to me like that's a solid wall.
Right.
I don't recall if you can go over 6 feet or not with the solid masonry wall or not.
I believe it's 8 feet.
If they're not. I guess you could do a 2-foot wood topper on it, but it seems like, it's going to have to be a really nice looking wall fence, if it's going to be that prominent on I-35, I would think.
Okay. So next month, he just have to present his ideas, I guess his opinions on the
if he
wall.
wants a hearing and a vote, we need to work with him to get it all figured out, so when it comes next time, then you'll have a clear request from him saying he wants to put a fence here and here and here, and it's going to look like this.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what he needs to.
But Brian, you guys allowed for a fence, you guys allowed for a chain link fence 2 blocks up for the truck company that needed to protect their equipment. You guys allowed for a chain link fence just to go up here. It seemed to be just recently. they repaired it or replaced it or whatnot, but it's a full chain link fence with barbed wire on it, you know? So I'm just asking for a good looking fence with some privacy, and that's pretty much it. But if you go up the street there, you have a full chain link fence around this guy's property. Once again, I'm just trying to come up with a final conclusion since for some reason, my address was placed to be up the street. I was supposed to hear this out tonight and get it finalized to move forward. I would still like to discuss, let's come up with a fence as if my address was right on this evening, and let's get it finalized so we can move forward for next month. That's what I'm asking, since the address was mistakenly put in the system wrong.
Right. Well, so since you brought up the truck stop, just so everyone's clear, the truck stop is zoned highway oriented. I don't know anything about barbed wire.
No, not the truck stop. It's some company start with a K. I can't think of the company name. But it's right up the street. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's zoned differently. I was on the council when that was on.
Okay. And I understand it. Yeah, that may be it there. I mean, zoned differently, I understand that, but at the same time, it's on the highway. I mean, anytime it faces the highway, the city, I mean, hey.
I can kind of speak to that from past experience. We would love for that not to have been on the highway. That's been there a long time.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
But
go ahead, sir.
No, I'm willing to do whatever, guys. If you guys think a masonry fence, I would do a masonry fence that mirrors what I have. I don't want to get too far off track to where we have 4 or 5 different fences. But if you guys think a cedar fence would look good, I would do that. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, the biggest thing, I know sound is my biggest component now, but I really want to take the visual aspect out of it as well.
Let me look up this code here real quick. Okay, so yeah, you can go up to 8 feet. So if you wanted to do a masonry wall, you could go up to 8 feet. I mean, if we were applying the standard code anyway. So, I mean, it sounds like if, you know, you got 8 feet to work with anyway. So whether you wanted to do a masonry wall or bring whatever forward for them to consider.
Right, he just need to bring that next month, right? Since we're hearing it next month, he needs to bring in pictures of the masonry wall.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
To building that,
and just to be clear, I'm not taking the wall all the way up the west side. I would take it, if you go right there, just where you have it pinned, it will stop right there. And that'll be it. That'll be the exit point there.
And then you drop down to a 4-foot type of fence.
Yeah.
So basically kind of like where the parking lot begins.
Right.
So then it would transition or drop down. And then and again, that's kind of like one of those points. I guess I should ask y'all, since we're here, would you want to see it transition, or would you want to see a 90-degree drop? Because see, those are the kind of details that are subjective that it's hard for staff to tell an applicant, do a transition or do a drop. You know, so it'd be, since we're here, y'all have a preference, good to let them know now.
I would love to see the transition. Personally, that's what I would prefer to see versus the drop. I think it gives a cleaner look, in my opinion.
Agree.
Mr. Brewer, is that what you were thinking of, Mr. Brewer?
Yes. A nice little transition down. Yes.
Right.
Anything else you might see that he might need? Or?
Nope.
I do have a question for staff about this accessory building. Is that something we are discussing as well, since I see proposed?
Yes, I've shown the floor plan and some elevations. I can bring them up here again. Mr. Burr calls it the ceremony hall. So it's got 2 bathrooms and an open floor plan, otherwise 1,200 square feet. I call your attention to the corners, kind of punch out. Again, the idea of that is this accessory building is to kind of mirror and look like the main building. So it's trying to replicate that same architecture. And then the elevations are here. it's a little hard to see how it punches out in the corners, but that's what is being shown here in the elevation. The top cap would be stucco, and again, the colors painted to match the main, so it's just meant to have a continuous look.
Yeah, so my question is for this zoning, does it require, I guess we're calling this a chapel, are there any size restrictions as far as this being an accessory structure to a main? Is that 1,200 square feet? Does that suffice?
No, this PD is a custom zoning district that basically just had the development plan and like a few restrictions such as that occupancy. So it's one of those like site plan zoning districts, so no real regulation that specifically allows them to or not. So that's why he's got to bring it to y'all to ask if he can do it. So really for anything, if you wanted to add a 200 square foot storage shed for tables or something somewhere, you need to come back and ask.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. That's all I have.
And you answered my question on earlier, Brian, on not having any double events. That was a concern with the parking, but you answered that's not the plan for Mr. Brewer. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, this is to be an accessory structure and just part of doing one event, not doing two events at the same time.
And I'd like to speak on that. Yeah, yes, it will not be any additional events. It's only for the use of the larger space. We just found a great need that we needed this ceremony space to accompany the reception hall as well. So it will not hold two events. We're not equipped to do so. So.
I work a lot of weddings, so I understand what you're saying there, and I understand the aesthetics that you're looking for as well. I did drive by and kind of take a look at that myself, and I totally understand where you're coming from. The fencing that you had shown earlier, I'll again go back to years on city council. We did look at those before, and there were a lot of negatives, but I understand why you brought that. The masonry, I'm great with, as well as even taking a look at the cedar. I know there's a lot of cost, and we just want to make, again, something that's very, just like you do, something that's very attractive for our city. So I appreciate what you've done there. I can tell you that.
We get those cedar up pretty quick too.
I would just like to see two options if it's possible.
All
right. It sounds like the masonry wall would give you the best benefit for your sound issues, unless you wanted to address that on the inside, like Brian was saying.
I agree.
Okay, well, and again, I apologize to Mr. Brewer for the notice getting botched, but all I can say is I apologize for that. We'll have to bring it back next month.
All right. Mr. Brewer, you have any more questions for the staff or anything like that? You got a clear idea of kind of what we're looking for?
I believe so. If that's everything, like I said, I would get with Brian. I tell you, he's been a big help. He's really been working hard with me. So, like he said, at the end of the day, we're good friends. So, but no, so he's been a wonderful help. So I get with Brian and work things out. We're trying to figure out a nice plan that really fits the city, and just try and complete this project and definitely make you guys happy. So I look forward to working with Brian.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Brewer. I guess we can move to agenda item G, conduct a public hearing and consider amending the comprehensive planning area PA-3 to provide for an increase in the DUA from 10 to 16 and to allow for apartments as a form and use in an area to be known as PA-3A and to correct minor errors in PA-3, City of Red Oak, Texas. Case number A as in Apple 21001, requested by city staff.
Okay, so y'all may remember the other month we were talking about some apartments. And we had the issue that and this is here, this general area where the apartments would be. And we had this general issue that, it was zoned, kind of partially zoned for apartments and with some restrictions and such, back in 2003. But then in 2010, the city adopted its first ever comprehensive land use plan. And well, in preparation for bringing the case forward, talking to the city attorney about, just reviewing cases and such, she brought up a very valid, good point that, well, your zoning and your comp plan need to align. No disagreement. It's just, this has been weird because, in 2003, they kind of partially do a zoning, but you have to bring that development plan back. But then in 2010, you've got this comp plan. And the comp plan seems inconsistent with the zoning. So we need to make sure that whatever happens at the end of the day, that the two are aligned. So, because the comp plan is saying that, it's limiting the density to 10. Well, the apartments would be 16, which the zoning says, they could have a max density of 16 dwelling units per acre. But the planning area 3 and its text in the comp plan, and maybe it's better if I just show you the pages. This is why it's very important that the consultant be very consistent, clear in their plan, but also they're told what needs to happen. So you've got these sections in your comp plan. And maybe I should just back up one step for a second. So when a planner talks about how your zoning needs to align with your comp plan, to the planner, what that means is not just your future land use map. It's not just the map with its colors that have to match or align. You consider the whole totality of the comp plan. Now, granted, if your future land use plan says something's supposed to be, say, industrial, then yeah, it's hard to ever come up with an alignment that's residential. I mean, that's a real extreme kind of idea. But it's not unheard of in a comp plan that you might have, say, something commercial, but what you're balancing maybe is that typical rub maybe between preserving something environmental in your comp plan. Some comp plans will have an environmental component, like keeping old growth trees or whatnot, and the character of your area. Well, maybe a zoning case comes in and there's an old growth tree section, right? And they want to change the zoning, but their plan shows they're going to cut it all down. Well, what do? Well, it's ultimately the zoning commission and city council's legislative discretion to determine what does it mean to align with the comp plan. And staff would usually point out the things that kind of work in favor or don't. But definitely at the end of the day, the map is very important and critical. All that to say, when we look at the comp plan in this case, planning area 3, which is where this is, would allow low-density, single-family residential according to this page, which is fine. And then there's another page for medium density, but 5 to 10 dwelling units, and mentions townhomes and brownstone. But then the high-density section that would apply to really apartments does not mention planning area 3. So from what I understand in talking to the property owner, Mr. Leibowitz, and the city manager, who were both here at the time, and Mr. Leibowitz owned the property, it didn't sound like they had any expectation that this would have occurred. And there's evidence for why that may be the case. When you look at, we have this other section that annoys me because to me it looks like zoning, is planning area 3, land use categories. Well, when you go down here, it says restrict all residential uses. I'm kind of thinking that's an error that I seriously doubt in planning area 3, given that it's a fairly localized area, that the intent was to ever restrict all residential uses. Because planning area 3 is basically Hickory Creek, this blue area. Sorry, I'm having a lag here. I'm trying to get this for you. But basically, this blue area here is the only planning area 3 in your entire comp plan. It's always known to be residential of some form.
Right.
So clearly that chart was wrong, right? And just, I think applying, a little common sense from what we see, obviously some level of residential was allowed. And, it's not my call, obviously, but, I tried to outline the area. But it would seem weird that you'd have the zoning in place, because normally, and the city has done this in other instances, like here's R3, like they'll call out an existing zoning district that's developed to try to say, hey, don't worry, we're not gonna mess with you. Yeah, my best guess, and again, I was not here, I do not know it for a fact, but maybe, yeah, this idea that this area would be limited below what the zoning had entitled it to in terms of density and apartment, seems like, yeah, there's a good chance maybe that was an error. But at the end of the day, the two need to align. I mean, y'all still have the discretion to vote the comp plan amendment up or down, but that's my best understanding of what has happened is most likely an unintended error in the development of the comp plan that the property owner and the applicant therefore have found themselves kind of in at the moment, the stumbling block for them. So your options are, you can approve the comp plan amendment. If you do, that means you're saying that, yeah, apartment and basically 16 dwelling units per acre may be okay. It doesn't mean you're automatically now having to approve the zoning amendment. It just means you're basically saying, you're essentially honoring what was in the original PD of apartments in this area with a max dwelling unit per acre of 16. Is basically what you're honoring.
Right.
Is that idea. Now again, as we've been debating, what does it look like in the form and the site plan and all those kind of finalized details are all still subject to your discretion. But, so you can approve the comp plan amendment and not necessarily approve as is or at all what they brought forward as an amendment. Not saying either way, just saying that's the option.
Right.
If you do not approve this comp plan amendment, then you should not approve the zoning, because then it won't align. And that was the city attorney's point, was that the two need to align at the end of the day. So you've got a choice, really, in the first instance. You vote to approve the comp plan amendment, we can proceed forward talking about the zoning amendment. If you disprove the comp plan amendment, then we should not proceed with at least the zoning as presented, because it'll be over the 10 dwelling units that the comp plan is currently showing. But again, I've talked to our city attorney, she's also here tonight. If y'all have other questions, we'll work out exactly how to amend the comp plan specifically. After all, we are doing a comp plan update, so we'll have a new one before long. But we just need to make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's and just making sure that that vision plan, that comp plan, will be aligned with whatever is chosen for zoning, after y'all make this decision. So with that, I think that flogs the horse enough.
Okay, thank you, Brian. This is a public hearing item, and I'm opening up the public hearing, and if individuals want to speak for this item, please state your name and your address. Is anybody against this item? If not, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
A motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and so commissioners, do y'all have any questions about item G?
I have a concern for staff. How many other PDs could be inconsistent if we have, this one that staff has discovered?
Well, honest answer is I don't know. I think, what the problem with this one, I feel, was that it was like a half-owned district. You know, they had, you know, if someone had come in and fully entitled it with a development plan and a final plat, I mean, maybe someone could still argue if it then sat for 15 years, if it was really truly valid or not, I suppose. But that's a whole lot more specific than this, you know, PD that we have, with the concept plan requirements and not even a concept. But again, it was a legislative act of council, so I mean, they can kind of, you know, they have that ability to do that. But we may find more. I don't really think there's going to be that many more, because I think the proliferation of our PDs have occurred more in the past 8 years. And I think this may have occurred, I think during a time where there was, I don't even know if they had a city attorney involved. I can't remember. There was a time period where I don't think they had a city attorney, or wasn't signing stuff. So there may be a few out there, but this one was weird, I think, just because of sort of the partial and incomplete entitlement nature of it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I have nothing else. I think I'm in agreement with staff.
Anyone else? Commissioners? Any questions? Can I have a motion, please?
I motion to approve staff's recommendation of amending the comp plan to be consistent with the development plan for the revised revision of PD 27.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda item G has been approved. Next on the list, we have agenda item H, and it's conduct a public hearing and consider amending plan development PD 27 with a development plan and other amendments as needed to provide for an apartment complex on approximately 17.1 acres, generally at the northwest corner of Red Oak Road and Hickory Drive, City of Red Oak, Texas. Case number Z as in zebra 200121, requested by Louis Leibowitz. Staff.
Okay. So we've been talking about this for some time, and I guess before I get started, so I don't forget, I'll say I re-noticed everything for this again, because the language changed a little bit, time had passed. So just to ensure that, again, we're dotting I's, crossing T's, re-noticed everything, and I got 2 contacts, I think 1 phone call, 1 email, as it were, basically asking questions that amounted to, what can I do about this, which implies they're against it. But that's all I've had. I didn't get as much contact as I did the last time around. So I just wanted to put that out there before I forget to mention. But anyways, you know, we've talked about this kind of at length, and so I don't necessarily want to go over everything all over again, but I'm happy to answer any questions if we need to revisit. What I kind of wanted to do was first, through the text of it, just kind of give you an idea that, if you saw in the memo, I tried to color code it a little, black being kind of neutral, green being seems good, and red being a sticking point. So in a nutshell, it seems like generally, from my notes and my memory that I took when we had the work session in the first public hearing, it seemed like he has, I believe, addressed everything that the zoning commission and staff has asked for almost. How he's addressed it, y'all, you know, again, it's subjective. You may or may not like it, but it's, you know, been addressed. The one sticking point that's still there is this issue of the screening conformance. The concept, and I just want to be fair also so we can all read it so you're not hearing my interpretation. So in the PD, the constant plan requirements, bear with me as I scroll furiously to it. Maybe I should slide. Let's see, where is it? 6-foot brick, stone, wrought iron screening wall with landscaping, sprinkler system, columns of the brick stone every 30 feet on center. So that's what it has in the zoning concept plan requirement. So that's there. Again, this is why, when we do PDs, I believe you should either do it as a site plan district where they give you the plans and that's the regulation, or you do an actual PD where it's a mini zoning code. Yeah, I would never advise doing this because now we have this debate of, well, I mean, really? That's all you had to do all the way around when the city had, as far as I know, that screening wall requirement between residential and non-residential. So for staff, that is, I believe, the one sticking point we have is not sure in the end which really applies. Maybe it's a question for the city attorney to advise us on as a planner. Again, I'm not the attorney, but it would seem to me that y'all, I would think, still have discretion on requiring that screening wall. Because again, as far as I know, the requirement was there. Even if it wasn't, if the ordinance, and I believe it was set up to go as amended, does that then bring in the new updated screening? And do we go with the more restrictive? I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, that's the only kind of red flag, hence why it's in red, sticking point that I saw. A lot of other things I think were addressed. The landscaping, and I'll show it in a minute with the landscaping and the elevations and everything, trying to give y'all a better visualization. The other thing is the dog park, I guess I misunderstood as they clarified, I guess what I thought they were proposing at the dog park originally apparently was more of an entrance area. But now they're showing an area that's almost 2 acres. I mean, now I wouldn't call it a fully functional 2 acres. It's got the detention pond in it and some slope to some of it, but still, even when you pull out, what is the functional area, you're still, from what I can tell, estimating it is probably around 0.8 of an acre or so. I Googled around looking who's got a dog park, this big for an apartment complex, and I wasn't finding anything over more than a couple of thousand square feet. 4,000 square feet was maybe the biggest. So, I mean, that's, when you think about that idea of placemaking, or I don't know if I exactly call it innovative, but it's different. If you think about maybe who you want to bring here and who has disposable income, well, people who might be moving here looking for jobs but didn't want to leave their family pet, they may be coming. That's a great thing. Maybe someone who's older wanted to give up the yard and tired of dealing with it, and wants to rent a place but would like some convenient place to take the dog still, so they don't have to give up their dog. This is a great option for them. The other thing is, when the city thinks about the sales tax revenue, well, you got to buy stuff for your dog. I know, I got a big dog, small little 105-pound fluff ball. Spend a fair amount. And the nice thing is that's not technically density or more people per se. It doesn't generate parking problems having dogs. Right. But you're going to spend more on them. And that register, even when they order online from Chewy or Amazon, if that's where they're ordering it from, like I do, that register rings and you still get the sales tax. So that was something that kind of jumped out at me as one of the benefits of what he's proposing. He certainly got a whole list of amenities as well that we've talked about before, with trash service and outdoor recreation areas and grills and fire pits and yoga lawns and pool and the office complex and the exercise center. So, I mean, providing all kinds of amenities, but that was the one that jumped out to me like, okay, well, this is different. This, you know, this could be something, that sets other apartments apart. Because that was kind of part of our conversation before was we don't want to have sort of the same level of apartment complex that everybody else has. You know, we need something, you know, as we've been pushing, something better. So I think that helps. So let me get you some pretty pictures. Let me see. So we've, or they, I should say they, reworked some of these elevations to include comments. There's not a good splitting of the difference on this. One issue we may still have, I guess it's this one. Is this the idea that, you know, as we've talked about, the elevation slopes down away from the road, and it's just the idea of, depending on where the elevation lands, you know, after you grade it and, you know, build something on it, you know, is it 4 feet down, 3 feet down, 6 feet down, what, you know, what it is. So, you know, from this angle, it may be a little hard to tell, but it, in theory, it's probably what, Ben, at least 3 to 4 feet lower?
Yeah, I think 4 feet starting at that corner, and it goes all the way to 6, I believe, a little
Okay.
further down.
Okay. So, you know, that's something that may not be entirely obvious in the elevation, so we just wanted to bring that to your attention, you know, just so you know, but certainly he's worked on providing elevations that are, or these renderings to give you a better idea. Asked him to make some of these trees a little more transparent so you get a better feel for the architecture of the building, since obviously it'll take a little while for a tree to get that big. Then these are the colored architectural elevations with the straight-on view. This is one of the units with the garages. Again, you wouldn't see garages from the front. You know, this would all be internalized. And let's see. Building type 2. Okay, where is my? Sorry, I'm looking for the one from the street view. And I believe this would be one of the types that you see from the street. So, you know, y'all had mentioned having kind of like that drop down in the roof line on the side. So, you know, he's showing that. So I'm not going to go everything. Y'all had plenty of trees killed to print the packet, but also just for the public record so they can see. And again, having kind of some breakup of that roof line. And here's the front of the clubhouse. So that's the color part. And let me get you more. So he's going to still, on that hard corner that we've talked about, the plan is just to have a kind of more of a large monument ground type sign, which would give it sort of some prominence and with the landscaping, but, you know, still sticking to this plan as a separate unit. The backside, this is where, actually I should show you the different plan. Bear with me. Yeah. Well, try to multitask here. So we're in.
Got sort of landscape architect.
Yeah, there wasn't in there. So here it is. Must have cut and paste instead of copy and paste. So in this northwest corner, so you still got your detention pond and everything, and it's fenced off. You've got some landscaping. So we've done more to kind of amenitize this back area. And so this kind of shaded out area is sort of the manicured area for the dog park. But really the whole area within the perimeter of the fence there is technically available. Well, not up here, sorry, but around the pond. So you've got, quite a bit of area to be able to play with a fair number of dogs at one time. And you've got two entrances, one down here towards Red Oak Road, and then one more in the Colonel Middle, the apartment complex. So you've got 2 points of access. So that's a good thing. We'll get you. Let's see.
Focus on
Focus on what?
just the right landscaping.
Okay, the corner.
Yeah.
Was there something you wanted to say
Oh,
about?
no, I just wanted to just so everyone's aware, they're planting trees up and down the right of way, all along the Red Oak Road and Hickory Creek.
And so here's that corner sign I was mentioning earlier that would be located here. And again, as this thing, yeah, they're doing trees, live oaks and red oaks, a mix up and down the street. Then there's a pool amenity with standing lawn, yoga lawn, fire pit, built-in grill area. So all this behind the clubhouse, pretty well centered in the development. And so this is kind of I guess you'd call it a conceptual rendering of what the pool area might look like. So, showing tables and benches and umbrellas with chairs and things of that nature. So this is one of the things that, we'd include as one of the exhibits in the ordinance, just because, later on, we want to be flexible and not necessarily get into, I guess, the exact detail of which set of lawn chairs you're getting. But at the same time, we need some kind of protection, though, something to say, like, if he comes, I'm not saying he would, but we always have to imagine the worst if we're not given specifics. So, if he came in with something that didn't seem to be consistent with the picture shown, we need something to be able to point to. So that's why, we would keep this as one of the exhibits to the ordinance, so staff has something to work with when doing the building permits or inspections for a CO later to make sure it seems like it's generally what was understood and being presented to y'all. And of course, these pictures are just to give you the idea. No one's going to hold them specifically to this. This isn't the same architecture, but it's just to give that idea, like in this case, the yoga lawn. Obviously, we're not going to expect them to provide yoga mats. We're just going to expect that, yep, there's a lawn, you know, and over here, you said there was a lawn, great, there's a yoga lawn. You know, the community seating, you know, that's just, again, to give you the idea. So, yeah, we'll expect to see some benches. The fire table, you know, I mean, this one looks nice, but it's more contemporary. If it looks like that, that's great. If it looks quality, like something similar, but maybe it's a different aesthetic, you know, that's fine. But that's kind of the level of detail staff is left with the deal in the end. But it's also more interior to the lot, so y'all may not know, but again, it also goes to the idea of the value of the film. Also, in some of these corners, there's some recreation areas where you can have, I think he's specifically calling out cornhole games. I don't think we're going to get into regulating and enforcing cornhole boards. But, I mean, there are areas provided to provide recreation and games. Am I forgetting anything, Ben?
I don't think so. I don't know if we want to go back to the color and elevations, kind of point out some of the items that were added via our conversation that we had the work session. So I think it was the very first elevation. But, you know, they went into Hickory Creek, as they were asked to go to the actual render. I think it was that bottom one. Yeah, so if you zoom in on that. So they went over to Hickory Creek and pulled some of the elements off some of the homes in there, like that brick cross pattern. They've got different stone accent, you know, kind of like we talked about, and then the big things were kind of adding the gables in instead of just having one big hip roof. Really changed the dimensions of the elevation, gave it more relief or better looking relief that kind of mirrored some of the architecture in the Hickory Creek subdivision across the street. Other than that, I don't remember specifically. The dormers, they added dormers to the top as well, which was another comment from the dormer shutters, and then above the windows they added some the I don't know what they're called, the little shed roofs that come off. So again, just they went into the subdivision because they were asked to make it look more like single-family homes and to use the aesthetic of the single-family homes across the street, which they did. With that, I don't have anything else.
So, yeah, I don't, so certainly happy to take any questions.
Thank you, staff. This is a public hearing, and now I'm opening the public hearing. Those in favor of this item, please state your name and your address, please.
Good evening, everybody. This is Taylor Stone. 3324 Greenbrier Drive, Dallas 75225. I am the developer on this, and you know what I really don't have much to add other than through you guys during the design session, and then through subsequent meetings with Brian and Ben. We tried to hit everything that you guys brought up. A couple of the things that maybe if I could just point out one that was overlooked that Ben was pointing out is, or two things. One, you guys had asked for, or at least staff, why don't you put some 8-foot doors on the entry facing the street, and we did that versus the standard 6-foot door. And then the other thing we did is you guys asked that no two facades for a home be the same. So there's 4 separate types of facades as you move down the face of this building. And we did that with the different buildings, and we tried to do that so, you know, you could say, oh, I'm at the arched opening with the, you know, single gable, and I'm at the arched opening with the double gable, and, you know, each one's just a little bit different. We tried to break that up as you guys wanted us to do. With that being said, I'm here to, you know, just answer any questions you guys have, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Is anyone else in favor of this item? Anyone opposed to this item? And can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close. I second.
Thank you. Commissioners, y'all have any questions or concerns about the agenda item? Go ahead, Mr. Frank.
Well, my first one will be, I have 2, but my first one will be, I didn't see the location of the mechanical utilities. I didn't see the location of those this time.
Yeah, it's gonna take a little longer, but we got a lot of documents.
We're gonna try to find it, Willie. I think they had done a small sketch of how they would be laid out, and they were.
It was in the landscape plans.
Oh, okay.
Right there.
Yeah, so they're kind of tucked in between some of the alcoves, and then they've got shrubs around them.
Okay.
Can you see that on the screen?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, so, you know, showing the landscaping side view with the 2 mechanicals back there. Overhead version.
All right. Yeah, and I know we've seen Mr. Taylor quite a few times on this project, but I have to say, just for me personally, I do think he finally got it, you know, to a Red Oak new standard, in my personal opinion. I think he's took a few tries, but I think he applied the majority of everything that we asked for. Assuming these renderings are brought to life, I have to applaud him and say he did a great job of listening and applying some of the things, most of the things we asked for to create a new standard here in Red Oak.
I second that, Willie. He, you know, I think the first try was nice, but it really didn't fit the area. Not everybody was really thrilled about apartments, but once we realized that was definitely something that was planned on going there, he's really he's hit it out of the dog park. I mean, he's given us everything that we've asked him to try to do to fit in with that area specifically.
Yeah, I think he's done a great job of being a pioneer to try to, you know, set the standard. I don't have any, you know, I think he's done a great job. I'll leave it at that.
I was also going to say, I agree. I mean, we obviously had previous meetings with him. He listened to us. He took back what we said. He's made the changes. One of the things I really liked in looking over these plans was the sense of community that it tends to bring. And one of the things that Brian did not mention was having a community garden, right? So just an opportunity to bring that sense of community between the dog park, the yoga lawn, the pool, the way that's set up with the, you know, also the cooking areas and some really nice amenities that he brought, which I think that's what we all like about Red Oak is the sense of community that it brings to all of us.
Thank you.
Frank, can we go back to, and I apologize you guys for having to catch up here, but on the screening, question and just kind of just give me that one more time, what we're looking at, because mine's historical way back, and that was a big concern of what it was going to look like from the roadway, things of that nature. So if you could just kind of hit that for me, I'd appreciate it.
And while you're bringing up those pictures, I have just a knowledge question for me for Mr. Stone. I was just kind of curious. I was looking at the number of one-bedroom apartments compared to the 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, and you have, of the 304 apartments, 200 of them are one-bedroom apartments, 210 of the 304. Is that typical in an apartment complex of how the ratio is broken out between the 1 bedrooms, 2 and 3?
It actually is. This is a standard straight down fairway type division where it's roughly 60 to 65% 1 bedrooms, another 30 to 35% 2 bedrooms, and 3 to 5% 3 bedrooms. You know, what we see here actually is young adults moving here, some young, you know, and commuting into work, and you know, maybe as things are expanding with Google and things like that, I think you might find some more coming into your market, which might be more engineering direct, and I think you're going to see some 1 bedrooms being used. It also is attraction for teachers and firemen and police officers and things like that.
Okay, thank you for that background.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hijack your question.
Oh, hey, no, great question.
Mr. Lindsay, this is the rendering. This is looking, you're standing, if you can imagine yourself kind of standing at the intersection of Red Oak Road and Hickory Creek, looking towards I-35. This is the rendering that shows it. The sign on the left that says Emerson, that's the exact corner of Red Oak and Hickory, and then as you kind of move to the right in the picture, you'll see another sign down there, and that's the entryway into the complex.
Okay, and it is open fencing, am I correct, as it shows there?
Yeah, so it's wrought iron fence with columns every
30 feet.
30 feet.
Okay. And and you said ingress and egress, there's 2, you said?
Yeah, there's 2 points of access. You've got your main entrance is on Hickory Creek, which is good because there's a median opening in Red Oak Road, and then there's no median in Hickory Creek, and then you've got a secondary in Red Oak Road to get out onto Red Oak Road and hit the highway.
And just out of curiosity, is this gated or open?
It's gated on both ends.
Okay, thank you. And I will agree that when way back in 2003, when we knew that there were apartments going to be here, this is well above what I know the council back then even believed it could be, and that was a huge concern, is to make sure that it was at this level. So you guys have done a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any other comments from the commissioners?
Nope, that's it for me. Taylor delivered.
Yes, from my standpoint too, I wasn't on the last discussion, but just looking at the plans over the weekend and right now, yeah, it looks great to me. So Red Oak is growing. You got new apartments. Like the developer said, attracting individuals here. You have Google going up and some other data centers coming behind that one. So I think it's a good project here for Red Oak. Can I have a motion for agenda item H, please?
I motion to approve the development plan for the completion of the should I call it development proposal? To approval as is. And if I need to restate that, I can.
Well, I guess the only issue we have left is this, you know, how y'all feel about the screening that, on the northern end over here.
Yeah, that north side is supposed to be, or is kind of planned to be just single family. It might be something like maybe smaller lot, single family, but single family nonetheless. And so typically what you have in between two different uses like that would be a masonry screening wall. And so they've carried the wrought iron down that way, but again, that is kind of not super clear in the original ordinance. So we would fall back more on our regular zoning ordinance that has more clarity for screening between uses, which would be a full opaque masonry wall versus the open wrought iron style with the columns.
Because the code for the screening wall says when you cause to be constructed a new non-residential building adjacent to a residential, single-family residential district, then the one causing the building to be constructed is supposed to build the masonry wall.
Right.
So since in this PD it shows that adjacent tract to be single-family, that would be like then that single-family zoning district, and this is that cause of construction. So that's if you're following that, literally that code. I mean, I guess, you know, thinking through, so what would be the impact, right? Like, so if you don't, I mean, if you go with as is,
Right.
with, as he's shown, and don't require that wall, I mean, in some ways, I guess either way, it's sort of a problem for the property owner, Mr. Leibowitz. Because somebody's gonna, I mean, the city normally says, well, we want this masonry wall. So if the person who buys a single family tract from them decides they want to do single family,
Right.
well, then our code says, well, congratulations, you get to build the masonry wall. So if we're following the code as written in that regard, because I don't know that it's clear in this PD either way, is likely going to be asked to build a masonry wall. Who should it be, or do y'all even feel like it's necessary? I mean, that's the other thing. It's just what, the standard code says, is do the masonry wall.
Right.
So that's just something, I guess, for y'all to think about, whichever way you want to take it.
Question for
But
staff.
I mean, I think the burden kind of falls on Mr. Leibowitz, really. It's his property, I mean, he owns the whole thing. So I imagine whoever he sells to is gonna, have a feeling about that.
But like I said, if it does sell, I know we're saying it's residential, so it can't be changed to multifamily. Or they-
Anybody can submit an application for a zoning change request.
Right.
It's just always open up to the commission and council's discretion whether they would like to change the zoning. So, in either case, I don't think there's any set entitlements on the single family to the north of this, so that person's gonna also have to bring in a development plan for that as well, I believe. I don't wanna speak out of turn, but I don't think there's any set lotting standards, but so it can be addressed at that time. But again, like Brian said, it's kind of a problem for the landowner, because he would have to it would be a negotiation point, I guess, between the landowner and whoever's going to develop that next week. But again, Brian's just stating typically what we do, because that's how the code's written. And typically, right now, the person who's building in between the single family and the not single family would be constructing the screening wall, the masonry opaque screening.
Yeah, I mean, the practical thing is assuming Mr. Taylor builds his proposed fence, on his side of the property line, right? Well, if they develop a single family on the other side, what are they gonna do? I mean, are they gonna put a wood fence up against it? You know, I mean, that may look weird. You know, I don't know, but.
Yeah, you get all kinds of problems from that, just because even if you leave 6 inches, it's unmaintainable 6 inches, you get little trees growing in there, and then all of a sudden, it's not looking great.
Yeah. And, you know, and I don't know that we have any means of, say, requiring that, you know, the future buyer of that property work it out with the current owner of the other property to ever jointly put in a masonry wall. Like, that's not gonna be a practical solution in the future either. So it's just one of the things of, you know, if we hold to that standard, someone's gonna be asked to provide it at that standard, if we're holding to it.
Right.
So,
And like I said, we can't really, I guess, not force, but I guess he could negotiate that with the next buyer, right? They could come up with a conclusion like, hey, if they really want this,
yeah, I mean,
this tract, hey, let's go half on this fence.
I mean, Mr. Leawood, if he's watching or listening, is certainly on notice that that'll be the expectation. So if someone calls prospecting on that land, we'll be telling them, you know, assuming this gets approved as is, then if I get that call, I'll be letting them know, by the way, hey, just, you know, when you're doing your business math, be aware you're gonna have to provide the masonry wall, you know, or design it in some way that you wouldn't have to, or ask y'all why, you know, he shouldn't have to develop that way. So, I mean, that'll just impact the next section of development.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I guess my question for staff would be, that area you said is zoned for residential, correct?
Yes, sir.
So I guess my question would be, since this is multifamily abutting an already zoned residential area, shouldn't that multifamily be responsible for putting in that fence, that masonry fence up front?
Yes, and that's, we're trying to kind of work within what the PD says, which was this kind of, this language that says, masonry slash brick slash, what, I don't have it right in front of me.
Oh, you want,
Is it down there?
so that one was applying to the single family part. This one applies to the multifamily part.
Right,
Okay,
so it's a 6-foot brick, stone, wrought iron screening wall with landscaping, sprinkler, with columns of brick and stone on every 30 feet on center. So, I think the applicant has termed that to mean, okay, I can either do brick, stone, or wrought iron screening wall, with the columns of brick or stone every 30 feet on center. And I guess from a staff perspective, we generally.
Wrought iron is not screening.
Right, but I think along the roads, we're not necessarily against it, but where it does abut the single family, because the road acts as a natural buffer, plus it's got a lot of landscaping in front of it. So I think the area on the north end of the development, we would deem, that probably needs to be the brick screening wall, just because that's what our standard code is, and that's what we would require on any other, development like this. So I think, you know, from a staff perspective, that's our interpretation of this, is that it should definitely be the brick on there. But since it does allow for wrought iron in such a way, we thought it'd be okay on the right of way. But to me, when I read that, it says brick / stone / wrought iron, which to me means all three. It doesn't mean one or the other, but again, I'm not want to argue that point, but because our standard code is in between anything that's not residential and residential is a brick masonry wall, then that section should be brick masonry.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with that, abutting a residential zoned area. Me personally, I just think about the protection of those potential homes. But I mean, Mr. Chairman, that's just my input. I would prefer something more solid, abutting a residential area. But again, that's just my input.
And I guess you guys have, the reason I didn't bring up any objections to that is you guys have been looking into this. I know, again, going, all I can do is go back, and in back years, we talked about not having the wrought iron, having it actually masonry walls. But I understand it on the front, but on the back, I would think that it would be their responsibility.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
I guess my question for the staff, was this brought up at all with the applicant?
Yeah.
And the applicant just left it?
But it didn't want to.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, we understand his point. He's saying, well, it doesn't say I have to do it here. And staff has said, well, but we got the standard in the code that we think applies. And he's understandably said, I don't want to. Again, it's expensive. I mean, we understand that. But yeah, I mean, this isn't a surprise. We've been mentioned.
Right. So I'm just, for example, if someone bought that adjacent lot, and they want to put houses there. So that person will have to put a masonry wall right there, right?
If we're going to follow that standard.
If we're going to follow that standard, that person will have to build the masonry wall abutting this wall here.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine this is one reason like why most developments today, I mean, like nearly 20 years later than when this PD was passed.
Right.
Would normally, in their planning for the area and as they build, might even be required to build, I believe as we do now, like your perimeter wall.
Right.
Right, like a lot of times we ask that gets done early on. Kind of because, what would probably make, I mean, granted, these aren't going to be shared properties. Not sure how you'd split it because this is different, but you probably would have wanted this clearly stated and locked in and essentially implied who's going to be the one taking ownership of it. But it's just typically, the pattern here is, like Ben and I both been saying, is if you've got a non-residential or apartment district and you build new construction, and you're adjacent to single-family zoning district, then our ordinance says you're supposed to do a solid wall. But again, he has this PD, so I mean, it's not 100% clear to us. We asked for it just because that would be consistent with what we've done, and seems like we should ask for it because we do have the standard code. And I believe the ordinance says something about things as amended, somewhere here. Usually we have standard language that says codes as amended. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I would think that standard would apply unless y'all didn't want it to. I'm looking for the language, I don't know. We do have our city attorney present, so I mean, if y'all want to ask her to weigh in on this issue, I mean, it won't hurt my feelings.
Can we, Mr. Chairman, because I think this is very important to me because residential, I think it's something we should definitely, I mean, we look at everything, but residential, it becomes a little bit different story when it abuts residential.
I guess my thing is, could it not be residential? If someone bought this and they want to do a zone multifamily and it got approved, what is it?
Yeah, that could happen.
That could happen. I'm just thinking if it could happen.
I mean, anything can happen. I mean, it's, all you got to do is submit an application. So
if that did happen, if there was multifamily there, the fence would be fine, right? The wrought iron fence.
Yeah, yeah, what you're saying, yeah, but I think alluding to what Brian said earlier, you kind of gotta think in the worst case scenario because it's already there, as single family, so it's
Right.
less likely for someone to come in and try to get higher density.
Right.
Not impossible and not totally out of the realm of possibility, but, the way our code is written, it's supposed to be done now.
Right.
And just to the point I was mentioning earlier about the language, I think this is the language I was looking for in section 5 of the ordinance for the PD. This ordinance shall be cumulative of all provisions of ordinances and of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Red Oak, Texas, and the Red Oak Unified Development Code, that includes their zone, as amended, except where the provisions of this ordinance, meaning this PD, are in direct conflict with the provisions of such ordinance and such codes, in which event the conflicting provisions of such ordinances and such codes are hereby repealed.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Taylor's asking if he could speak and offer a compromise.
What do you?
Go
Go ahead, Mr. Taylor.
Okay, thank you very much. Just one of the things about a masonry fence, when you say masonry, that implies that it is brick. And it's beautiful. It's like the one that's across the street. One of the things that we could look at doing is there's a product called Fencecrete, and it is a fence made out of concrete, but it can be stamped to look like brick. Would that be something maybe you guys would consider? Because what happens is when you build a solid masonry fence, it's about $150 a square foot. So just this 400-foot length of fence is about $100,000. If I did my math right, because I'm doing it in my head. But anyways, the Fencecrete product is about $75 to $80 a foot. That would be one solution. The other compromise would be on the west side of the property that backs up to the trees and the drainage that come down and all that. That's always going to back up to that. I still have to put columns back there for the fences every 30 feet. Each one of those columns costs around $300 to $400. And if I didn't have to put columns along the back fence line, that could help pay for that solid wall as well. Just some thoughts I'll put out there. And I want to let you know why we left the fence the way it was. Brian did recommend we go with the solid fence. The PD specifically said brick/stone/wrought iron. It does not say solid fence. And so we were trying to honor the PD. And yes, it was to our benefit. I understand that, but we didn't want to move off of anything that could cause an issue. You're looking at some right now, and you can stamp them 6 ways to 100.
Yeah, we've got some, Taylor, we've got some of those in the city elsewhere, and they've not been received well by council
Okay.
after they were held. From a staff perspective, I would say removing the columns on the back side of the fence or the back side of the property, I think I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that if the commission wanted to talk about that or wanted to know staff opinion. I don't think staff would have a problem with that if the solid masonry wall was done along the north side. That would be an acceptable compromise to staff.
Okay.
Makes sense. That's a good. To me, that's a good idea. Taylor presented taking the columns off I guess that's the west side,
Yeah, if you want to pull up the development plan, just so everyone.
and make the north side a solid masonry fence wall.
Show it on here. I think that's here on the facility, go to the first page. it goes all along that back property line and then into the dog park area and around the, detention pond. Now, as soon as it gets back to where it's along Red Oak Road, those masonry columns would have to go back on. But I think starting right, we'll move your cursor down a little bit. So right there, where it kind of starts wrapping and heading north along the backside of the detention pond, if that was just straight wrought iron across there, I don't think there'd be an issue with that from an aesthetic standpoint. Just because it is in the back of the development where it's more difficult to see back there.
Right.
And you can't really tell from this, but the grade drops down quite a bit back there, so, I mean, there's a good chance you wouldn't be able to see it anyway, from the roadway, because the grade drops down so much from the actual complexes and from the roadway.
I'm trying to mark in red where we're saying we would give up columns.
Taylor, this is the areas you're talking about, right?
Correct. Yeah, I'm still on the negative side of the equation, but every little bit helps at this point. I didn't want to get into this one. We've spent a lot of money trying to really improve this for the city, and yeah, it's starting to get real tight. But I'd be willing to do that and then put the solid wall on the north side.
I personally would be fine with that.
Yeah, I think it's a fair compromise.
Yes, I'm agreeing with that, with Taylor's proposition.
Yeah, but I just have to, I wouldn't be able to sleep right if we didn't protect that residential side.
And just so y'all know, none of this was submitted without Mr. Leibowitz's approval. He knew what was being presented on the north side, but I do understand your position of protecting it in the future, and that's fine. But he did see it.
Okay. All right, can I have a motion, please, again, for agenda item H?
I move to approve agenda item H, pending removing the columns in red that's placed on the development site plan in exchange for a masonry wall on the north side of the property. Brian, should I add the height of the wall?
I think it's called out as 6 feet, so unless you wanted to do
Okay.
something other than 6 feet.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed?
I think she was there's just a lag. I think she was voting in favor.
Voting against.
Ask her to clarify.
Can you clarify, Miss Kim? Was that
Yes,
aye for?
I'm sorry, I was voting in favor. I just couldn't get to the unmute button fast enough.
That's fine. Okay. We have no no's, so agenda item H has been approved. Moving to the next item, item I, executive session language.
Well, we don't have need for that, so we can go to our consent agenda.
Okay. Correction, no agenda I. Last thing to do is to go with the consent agenda items. We have 2 of those. All items listed below are considered to be routine by the Planning and Zoning Commission and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of the items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in the normal sequence. Approval of the consent agenda authorizes the administrative official or designate to place each item on the city council agenda in accordance with the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendations. So like I said, we have two, A and B. The first one is considering of approving the minutes of the regular meetings for December the 7th and December the 16th of 2020. And agenda item B, considering approving the preliminary plat, the Emerson Red Oak addition, being approximately 33 acres of the GC Park survey, generally at the northwest corner of Red Oak Road and Hickory Creek Drive, City of Red Oak, Texas. Case number P as in Paul 21004, requested by Louis Liquid. So, commissioners, have you had a chance to look over the agenda items A and B?
Oh, yes.
Any questions?
I have none.
Any concern?
Well, yeah, with that as a consent agenda, you'd just be voting to approve it or not, unless you want to take something off to discuss. But otherwise, it's just, you vote in one motion to approve it or not.
And can I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we can approve the consent agenda as listed.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unopposed? Consent item agendas are approved. Last but not least, adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second
Thank
it.
you, Mr. Frank. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Second by Ms. Kim. All right. Thank you, commissioners, for you tonight participating in the event. See y'all next month.
Thank you.